is like making sure they understand like what photosynthesis is doing, and it's a pretty simple like idea or logic that photosynthesis brings to us. It's the taking in of sunlight, so it's the conversion of solar energy into chemical energy.
What day is today? Sorry.
Monday. So the conversion of solar energy into chemical energy. And if you think about it, it's basically the process that nourishes or provides energy. From outside Earth to Earth.
Good morning. Good morning.
Glad you made it.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Welcome back.
Feel like this Thursday.
It's okay. Let's throw in some other keywords here. I know they're mentioned on that reading guide that you have, like my little clip notes. What is an autotroph? Right, makes its own food.
What does it say? Outside what?
From outside of Earth to Earth. And so what producers are is they're basically like autotrophs that are able to use the sunlight and CO2 to produce energy. And that's energy that's stored in the end in food. More specifically, if you think about plants, plants are like a special type of producer. They're called a photoautotroph, which means they're able to use sunlight to generate their own food. So one of the ways that I really think about this is I think about what we did last week. And what we did last week to me was essentially this. What have I drawn there? Steps, right? So yeah, I've drawn stairs. And remember last week we started off with glucose. And we produced how many O2s or CO2s? I'm sorry. Do you remember? It's very simple to remember these. If you're like all these numbers, you're doing it wrong. C6H12O6. How many C's do you think you'd have to blow away? 6. So that would be 6 CO2s going away. And how many NADHs and FADH2s combined do you have to make? 12. That's the C6H12O6. Now along the way, we yanked off 2 things from your sugar or your sugar derivative. What were those 2 things that we yanked off? Electrons, and what else? Hydrogens, or protons. And we have to store them. Where do we store them? FADH2, right? So we store those biomolecules in NADH and FADH2. And so we're taking high energy glucose and producing low energy CO2 6 times over, and we're getting the energy out of it, and that energy is what produces what in the end? And when you use those to produce ATP, you're doing certainly an oxidative phosphorylation, and you produce somewhere along the lines of a max of about 38 ATP along the way, give or take what book you're reading. You take high energy molecule, you break it down to low energy, you release energy along the way. Now photosynthesis, if this was respiration, then here's what photosynthesis would do. Photosynthesis, and again, I'm trying to draw them like equal, but they don't look a little equal, that's fine. Photosynthesis would take 6 CO2s, or a number of CO2s, and you would form glucose or some type of sugar is the outcome, which means this time you're having to insert in the electrons and insert in the protons.
Okay, so I never really understood this. How much energy goes so does it like balance out like the amount of energy that goes in, or is there like less energy going into photosynthesis?
You put more energy in. There's more of an investment to make glucose than there is glucose coming, like the amount of energy that glucose can release.
Does that just waste time? Or
It's not that it wastes time. It just means that you need more sunlight to power, like the amount of sunlight that strikes and that powers photosynthesis is way more than is used by the byproducts of photosynthesis.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So if there's a photoautotrope who uses sunlight to make its own food, there's others who does not use sunlight?
Yeah, like we, ourselves.
Oh, so like, no, but like as an autotroph.
Yes, there's like chemoautotrophs, yes. There's like what? Chemo, which they would use chemicals as their energy source instead of the sunlight. This would be like bacteria that don't like the sunlight at all. Do what?
What are the examples of chemoautotrophs?
There's not most, but a fair number of bacteria are chemoautotrophs. They make their own food, but they don't use sunlight to do it. They use just raw chemicals. So hopefully you see the difference here is that in respiration, you're producing NADH as you pull out the electrons and protons, and you're dumping them into NADH. You generate ATP from that, and now you're having to expend ATP. You're having to expend NADH or something like that to build the glucose back up. Do you see the difference here? As I go down the steps, I release energy, so as I go up the steps, I should require energy. Like, it's this opposite effect that runs this planet, it seems. We're seeing it here. Another common question is a question of like, well, who's doing photosynthesis, to try to maybe get an idea of like who is responsible for this. Certainly we know plants are doing it. There's certain protists out there that are doing it. Remember, protists are one-celled creatures that typically live in the water. There are some bacteria, just a few. Those are the prokaryotes.
Okay, I have a question about that. So, if prokaryotes tend to not have membrane-bound organelles, what would they use as photosynthesis? Do they just use like random?
And that is like the best question anyone could ask right now. So let's go there. The question is, photosynthesis, we know for sure, if you look at a plant or you look at a protist, it happens in the chloroplast. And if you turn in the reading guide, you definitely were able to answer that, because I'm sure that was at least a question that you had to know, or some fact you had to know coming into it. Right? So the chloroplast, right? The chloroplast is a membrane-bound organelle, right? But bacteria or prokaryotes don't have membrane-bound organelles. So the question would be, how could they be doing this membrane-bound situation photosynthesis inside of a chloroplast when they themselves are the size of a chloroplast, right? Raise your hand if you know what this means.
Oh, yes. Did we learn about this kind of before?
Yes.